Are you a real estate investor looking to sharpen your skills or a newbie looking to become one? You're in the right place. Welcome to Where Should I Invest? Real Estate Investing in Canada with your host, Sarah Larbi.
Hey guys, it's Sarah Larbi here, and today we are going to be talking about Brantford, Ontario. That's actually my investing town, and I started investing there in 2013. I bought my first property. It was actually a very small bungalow. I bought it for $130,000. Can you believe that? That was in October 2013, and it actually took me a couple years to convince my boyfriend to want to be a landlord, and he was terrified of tenants and having a professional tenant that doesn't pay, et cetera, et cetera. And so our first tenant was his sister, and she still lives there to this day. So we ended up buying a house, and we bought a house based on her budget. And that was our first tenant. And from there, I found tenants oftentimes even before I closed on properties and before I even found a house. So it really helped ease him into the rental investing side of things where he felt more comfortable and I could still make money. So that was our first house. And one of the mistakes I think we made was we did not use a local investor at the time. We used somebody that was from out of town and didn't really know the market. And it was okay because we knew we had a tenant picked out already, and we knew what we needed to find in order to cash flow based on my sister-in-law's budget. But it was not the easiest thing to do because every house that we saw, we had to drive out and go look at it, and it might be a disaster, but we didn't know until we got there. So we would get in the car with a realtor probably once a week for, I would say it took about 3 months to find the property. And the second house, I thought, well, maybe I should just do it ourselves and contact each selling agent one by one to get them to show us the property. And actually it was kind of fun, but very time consuming, and I would not do it again. The second house we found was a house that was $177,000. And that one we're renting for $1,300. It is a 2-story brick house, and it was a really great deal. The house had a fire in 2009 and actually was completely redone up to code for that year. So we really got a good steal on that. And that was great. But afterwards, when we wanted to keep buying more and more, because my goal is to at least buy 1 or 2 properties per year. And obviously the cash flow is important, but I have a full-time job that I really do love, and I don't have time to necessarily make these calls and go and see these properties. So we ended up finding Manny Munir, who's going to be our guest on the show today. And he's been really great because he actually is an investor himself, and he started when he was very, very young. I think he was 22 at the time when he bought his first property. He's about 37 now, and he's up to 22 properties, which is amazing. But I think the most important part was he's actually an investor that's a realtor and is local. So he's been able to go and actually see properties before we have to take the drive out there, being from Oakville. So it's, 40-minute drive to get out. If the house is not even worth looking at least we can find that out by him going. So it's definitely saved us a ton of time not having to do that. And also we've been able to jump on things very quickly. So as an example, so the first house that we found with him was a great buy. Actually, it was a house in Old West Brant, and it is a 3-bedroom and 1.5 bath, really, really nice house that backs onto a school or a daycare yard rather, like a full brick 2-story finished basement property that I bought for $207,000 in 2015. I think it was November, and I'm renting that for $1,500. And so he found that for us, and we were able to buy that fairly quickly. Actually, the really cool thing about that house is I used one of my showings and I did an open house, had a bunch of tenants come through and found one that way. The other house that he bought, so house number 4 out in Brantford, he helped us close that. And that was a $165,000 house, which I bought obviously with my spouse in March of last year. So March 2016. So that house I bought for $165,000, renting for $1,300. Great numbers. And actually just got it reappraised last week. We are in July of 2017 for $232,000. So definitely a great deal. The last house I bought with him, so house number 5 out there, was also an amazing deal. Again, that was actually on the market for a day and had 5 offers. So again, being ready, he's going to talk about that in the podcast, and being ready to jump when a good deal happens is very important. So making sure that your finances are in order and that you've got the down payment and everything to go. That house that he found us was $151,000. That was just this last December. That was a bungalow. It was a 2-bedroom, but one of the bedrooms is just missing a closet. So let's just call it a 3-bedroom for renters. And I'm renting that 3-bedroom that I bought for $151,000 for $1,300. So definitely when I look at Brantford and other markets, I love Brantford's cash flow, and you can still find good deals. Like obviously it's getting harder. You know, the deals I was able to get for 177 are probably about 250, which is still good. The rents have also increased. So I really do look at Kijiji daily after work and first thing in the morning to see, what's going on in the market. The rents have also increased quite dramatically. So, what was $1,400 last year could easily be rented again for $1,500-$1,600 this year for obviously new tenants. So there's definitely some good options for somebody that is willing to be in the market long term and buy and hold. And really that is, to me, that is the best way to do this. If you're going to look at it as a long-term investment, buy for cash flow, buy for a long term. And, if the market drops a little bit, who cares? You have the cash flow. That is the most important thing. Don't buy something that's going to cost you money every single month. What's the point? You're going to be capped very, very quickly. You're not going to be able to get any more mortgages, and you're going to hate it because as soon as, if you're like on the verge of not making any money, maybe you break even every month and something happens that you need to spend a little bit more money on, you are going to hate being a investor and a landlord. But when you're making money every single month, and on top of that, you're getting the appreciation, or you bought well so that that you've already got equity into the property, plus you've got your tenants paying down your mortgage, you're laughing. It really is the best kind of investment. And having somebody locally in the town that you want to invest in that's actually an investor just makes it so much easier, and it allows you to focus on other things, playing with your kids or spending time with your family. Like those are really important things. And if you want to work on real estate, the best thing to do, listen to some podcasts, read some books, go to some meetup groups. Like that's the fun stuff. I spend tons of time on that. I probably spend 2 to 3 hours a day doing a mixture of those things, right? Podcasts, books, meetup groups, et cetera, et cetera. But I love it. I love it. But if you just want to make the money, that's okay too. You can find a great team wherever you go, even if it's not Brantford. If you find a good realtor and you find somebody that's an investor themselves that's local, and then you've got their team that you can borrow, and you've got a good mortgage broker, really you're set. And all you got to do is just make sure that you do not chicken out when it's time to pull the trigger. The other thing I would say is, part of the goal of this podcast is to really focus on each region. I'm in Brantford, and why that's important is that as soon as something comes up in Brantford, I know if it's a good deal or not. But if I had a house in Brantford and then a house in St. Catharines and a house in, Windsor and a house up in Thunder Bay, I have no clue what I'm buying. Really, at the end of the day, it's very, very hard to know when a good deal hits the market if you're not actively looking or have a team of people that are there for you. And that house, the last one I bought, $151,000. I mean, that is just like, you've got to be ready right away. That house had 4 offers and we just knew that we needed to get it, took our conditions away. We were ready with financing. We were ready with the down payment. We had everything in order. That's important. And also, as soon as it came up, I knew the area really well. I have a few other properties there and I knew I could get a renter very, very fast. So again, those are not going to happen every single day, but be ready to jump. Know the market, know what renters want. Look at Kijiji, figure out what their wanted ads say. Look at what's on the market that's available right now. So look at that supply and demand. And that could be for any market, but become that market expert. So I'm really, really excited to do this episode today with Manny, just because he's helped us so much. And he's made us a bunch of money. And he's actually an investor himself. And I think that is really important, because when you're working with realtors, you don't care about the fancy lights. You don't care about the colors. Like, those are all things that can be changed. Look at the numbers and look at the fundamentals of the area. All right, so let's get on to our podcast about Brantford, Ontario with Manny Munir.
Hi, Manny. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good, good. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast today on Where Should I Invest?
Yeah, you're welcome, and thank you for the opportunity.
So today we're going to be talking about you and also Brantford, Ontario, which is a town that I'm personally invested in myself. So I'm really excited to learn more about it.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah,
And
I'm excited to share it.
so before we get started, can you tell the audience a little bit about yourself and what kind of investments you have?
Yep. I am originally from Brantford, so grew up in Brantford, know all the ins and outs of Brantford. So, if anyone ever needed to know anything about Brantford, I'm the guy. I started investing in real estate at a young age. I've always been interested in real estate. I bought my first property, I believe I was around 21 or 22. Just loved it, got hooked, bought my second one, bought my third one. I believe in my first year I bought 3 or 4.
Wow.
And every couple of years I've been buying 1 or 2 properties. Now I'm at 22, including my office. So I have 21 rental properties, and then the 22nd, which I bought about 2 years ago. No, I'm wrong on that. Last year I bought that, and that's my office. So that's where we run our real estate practice out of. So I have a total of 22 properties now. I have a lot of single-family homes. I have 4plexes, I have triplexes, I've got duplexes. I also do have a 6plex as well. So I have got quite a bit range of multifamily units as well.
That's great. I didn't actually know that you had so many. How did you actually get into investing in the first place?
To be honest with you, I used to always ask successful people how they started, because I'm fascinated with how people get from point A to point B. So a lot of the things I used to hear, which was in common with all of them, most of them anyways, was they invested in real estate. So that kind of intrigued me, being a young guy. I'm like, wow, okay, you know what, if real estate's been good for them, I'm going to give it a shot as well. I went back to my parents. They were totally against it. They said, no, you buy one house, you live in it, and you pay it off, and that's it. So I kind of had to break out of that shell without telling them. I went and bought my first one. So I'm glad I did.
Wow. What did they say when they found out that you have 22?
Yeah, they did come around. After, I think, probably my 7th or 8th one, they finally gave up. They're like, okay, he seems to know what he's doing, and, he's fine now. And then my brothers got into it as well back then.
Oh, very cool.
So now my whole family's into it.
So now your parents, are they doing it as well?
No, they're older. They're in their early 70s, so they're retired, and they're not into it at all.
That's great, because you were able to do that. So you're also a realtor. You're my realtor. How long have you been doing that for?
I've been in real estate for about 15 years. So I started at a young age. I'm 37 now, so I started at about 22 is when I got into it.
That's awesome. Good to start young. I mean, that's one thing that I am young, but I also look back at it and say, if I could have just started 2 or 3 years earlier, the best time is yesterday, but the second best time is today. I do truly believe that.
Yeah, no, for sure.
So you do what, buy and hold? Did you do any flips? Any rent to own?
Earlier in my career, I wasn't as busy, so I originally did buy and hold, and then I got intrigued with flipping. So I've flipped a few houses as well. If I was to guess, I'd probably have flipped close to 10 houses in my career. I don't do that now because I just don't have the time for it. And I stopped buying, other than my office, I haven't bought a property for at least 5 years. I think I've got enough, and then eventually I would, refinance and go buy something big, either a plaza or an apartment building. And that's my goal.
Yeah, that's a great goal. How hard is it in Brantford to find something like that?
Very tough. They do come around once in a while, but yeah, they're tough to find. Usually properties like that, they're good, and usually owners don't usually sell them. But they do come around. I would say every couple of years, a good building would come up. You just have to be ready for it.
Yeah, that's the trick, right? To be ready right away, because as soon as it hits, I find MLS after a couple of days, so many eyeballs have seen it already.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Did you get any pocket deals?
Yeah, I've got quite a bit of, over the 15 years, we've built up a huge clientele. So we do have clients that have, 52-unit apartment buildings. We have clients that have plazas, gas stations, really anything you can think of. So we usually, if one of them is going to sell, we usually sell them to our own clients.
Well, think of me.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely.
So do you have anything other than Brantford? I know potentially Paris is nearby. Do you invest only in Brantford right now? Or
I've got 3 properties in London. I've got two in Welland. I've got a condo in Toronto. And then the rest of my properties are in Brantford. I like Brantford because I know Brantford. We're going up each year. It's just in my backyard. It's easier for me, and I've always, knock on wood, a good experience.
Yeah, it's awesome. It's awesome that, you're also from there, and there's not a lot of realtors out there that are really focused on running the numbers for their investors, and you do offer some other additional services for investors, like, for example.
Yeah, that definitely, sorry to cut you off there, but we're investors ourselves. I'm an investor, so I know how an investor thinks. So we do a lot of the legwork already for them, because we'll go look at properties, we'll crunch the numbers. If it makes sense, then we'll bring it to the table. If not, then we don't even, bring it to the table. There's no point wasting everyone's time. So we feel that that's pretty handy for most people.
Yeah, it's handy in the fact that also you allow some additional help for lease signings and us to use your office for that, and even running checks for us, background checks on tenants. So I think that's awesome.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, we try to make it as easy as possible for investors. Like you said, when we sell an investment property, we'll help rent it out. We'll screen the tenants. We'll do the leases. If there's any issues or anything like that, we can take care of it, and we don't charge anything for that. We're in the business of, selling property and buying property. We're not into, charging X amount for property management. If someone wants a property manager, we do have access to a property manager, but we will try to do as much as we can, just try to make it easy for the investor, because a lot of them are from out of town.
Yeah, makes sense. So in Brantford specifically, where do you like to invest personally? What areas are good for investors?
Honestly, I will buy property in Brantford anywhere, as long as, obviously the price and the numbers make sense. One of the areas I do really, really like, and I've always done well, is in Eagle Place. Eagle Place is, it's a nice area, a lot of hardworking families there, and there's lots of schools there, so the tenants tend to stick around for a longer time. So that's why I like that area. It's an upcoming area. It's kind of close to the downtown, so there's lots of reasons why I like that area, but those are just some of them.
Mm-hmm. What do you think about Old West Brant or West Brant?
Yeah, Old West Brant is good as well. Homedale is good. North End is good. West Brant is good. Well, really, there's really not anywhere that I would tell investors not to buy. Brantford's upcoming. There's probably a couple of streets and a couple of areas that I would tell them to stay away from. But other than that, I think most of Brantford's pretty good.
So is it always like this, like when you started buying, or has it changed a lot in the past few years?
Yeah, no, it's definitely changed quite a bit in the last 10 years. Before you would go to downtown, you would probably be frightened, and then I'm just being generous. It was a pretty scary place. We've had lots of films that filmed horror films in the downtown area that were filmed because our downtown was just really, really bad and really scary. Last probably 10 years, the government has spent probably close to $300 million into the downtown area, especially with Laurier and the casino. Now the Y is coming, almost a $70 million project. So there's lots of opportunity and lots of good things happening in the downtown area. So those are all good signs.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned Laurier. So I want to say it's still a fairly new development, and there's a lot of students that are coming more and more each year. How has that really affected even just the supply and demand?
The student housing has definitely done wonders for our downtown. We started with about 30 students, and now we're at about 3,300, and it's supposed to go up to 12 to 15,000 in the next 10 years. So lots of growth there. So there's lots of people doing student housing. There's lots of new buildings that have been built. So Laurier has done wonders for the downtown of Brantford. Now they've teamed up with the Y, which is, like I said, a $70 million project that's going in the downtown. So lots of good things. I mean, it's a really positive thing for Brantford.
What about the jobs? Like, what are you seeing other than Laurier? Are there big companies that are coming into the town?
The job situation is probably one thing I think Brantford needs to improve on, because we've got, a lot of people moving here and they're living here, but they're working elsewhere. We're a bedroom community, so Brantford is trying to bring in a lot of jobs. Like we had Freo, Rocher, move their headquarters here in Brantford. We've got a couple of big companies as well. Toyota is only half hour away. Our location is really good, so they're trying to bring more and more jobs here. Hopefully in the future that does improve.
Now, do you think Hamilton and the development in Hamilton is trickling into Brantford?
Yeah, definitely. I think, Toronto is trickling into Hamilton. Hamilton is trickling into Brantford area. Almost 70% of the houses that are being bought in Brantford, they're all from out of town, which, it's a very strong number, which means there's lots of growth to come in the future for Brantford. Our boundaries just got expanded, so that should be another at least 10,000 more homes coming in the future. So all the signs are there. That's why I'm a big fan of investing in Brantford. Our prices are very reasonable, and we're at $350, where Hamilton is $550. Mm-hmm. We're only a 20-minute drive, so that's why a lot of people tend to come out this way, because of our prices and our location.
Definitely still a cash flow market. I mean, you've been able to find me some amazing deals. Like the last three you found me, not that this will happen all the time, but that house that you found for us to buy was $151,000. We're renting that at $1,300. So the cash flow numbers are really good. Granted, you can't find that everywhere, but you definitely can't find that in Hamilton anymore.
Yeah, no, for sure. And we get those type of deals, and we usually, we don't even put them on the market. We usually just sell them to our clientele because we've got a big database. So
when it comes to fundamentals and, transportation and accessibility, Via Rail goes out there, correct?
Yeah.
So what do you think is going to happen, and what does, that look like in the next 5 to 10 years?
I think we are gearing up to get the GO train down this way as well. And I think once that happens, it's probably a longer time frame. I would say 5 to 7 years. Once it does come here, Brantford will just explode, the downtown especially. So, that's another good thing that's going to happen to Brantford is when the GO comes. It's already in Hamilton. Eventually it is going to come down here as well.
So would it be smart to find locations or properties around 800 meters from the train station?
Yeah, definitely. And that would be your downtown area, which I would say would be a good place to invest as well, because those prices are just going to keep going higher and higher.
You did say that there's a couple of streets downtown, though, so it is important to know the market because you don't want to be in one of those.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and that's where I would come in, and there would be a couple of streets where I would tell you not to invest in.
Absolutely. So population, can you tell me about the changes in the last few years?
Yeah, our population, I mean, we're not a very big city where our population is just under 100. I believe that the accurate is 94,000. Mm-hmm. But then we have the smaller communities, like you said, Paris, Brantford, St. George. Altogether, if we counted all those little communities, we're 130.
Okay, so it's definitely growing.
Yeah, definitely. I would say Brantford tends to grow up at a slower rate than most places, especially, compared to Toronto and Hamilton and all that area. But we are definitely growing. Our market went up 28% from 2016 to 2017 so far. So, I mean, that's a great number.
Absolutely. It is amazing. And even now being for me to be able to look at the houses that you found for us, a year and a half ago, we're actually able to refinance them, pull out our entire down payment and keep going, which is amazing.
Yeah, definitely.
So in terms of employment rate, is it high unemployment? Is it average? Employment
rate, to be honest with you, I would say it's just average. I wouldn't know the accurate rate, but I can look into it, but I would say it's average. I mean, there's lots of jobs here. They might not be well-paying jobs, but there is lots of jobs here.
Yeah, it's definitely more of a blue-collar community, but that is perfect for investors.
Yeah, definitely.
You've got a lot of families that are looking to rent. So let's just say I don't have any properties there and I want to get started. What am I looking at and what does the rent look like? Let's just say for like a single-family property.
Single-family property, you're probably going to be looking around 200 to 250, possibly, somewhere in that range. I mean, you can go a little bit lower as well. Mm-hmm. Sometimes those deals do come. Something like that would rent for anywhere from $1,400 to $1,600 plus utilities.
That's really not something that you can get in many other markets.
Yeah, and I would agree with that. Yeah, definitely.
So do you come across them monthly? Is that like a once in a blue moon, or is that pretty standard right now?
No, we get them. I would say probably a couple a month at least. It's just the investors just have to be ready, and
that is very important.
Yeah, for sure. And they're pre-approved and they know exactly what they're looking for. And if something comes up, and then they actually have to put an offer in right away. It's unfortunately just the way the market is.
Right. What about student rentals? How is that market?
My personal opinion on student rentals right now, I think it's saturated. But having said that, if someone was to buy something closer to the downtown area, had 4 or 5 bedroom, I think that would be a good property to buy. Instead of renting it to students for now, I would rent it out to a single family. It's just, there's lots of competition for the student housing market because a lot of people are trying to do that. Eventually, when we get to the 12, 15,000 students, then it's going to be, really, really good. But for now, I think it's a little saturated.
What kind of timeline do you think that's going to be for those students to come?
Yeah, I think it's a long-term plan. I would say probably 8 to 10 years.
Okay, that's good. So student rooms are what, $450, give or take?
Yeah, they were roughly, they range from anywhere from $450 to $550.
Okay. And there's a lot of competition. So, that is one of the things that you mentioned for families to buy a single family property, even 3-4 bedrooms, instead of renting it to students. I find that there's such little supply and high demand, and it's so easy to get a renter in there. I mean, most of them you can probably do before you take possession of the property.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, there's actually never a shortage of tenants. The only problem is, you have to, with our help, we just have to weed out the bad ones and, get the good ones.
Absolutely. How do you screen tenants?
We get them to fill out an application on behalf of the investor. So we'll get them to fill out an application. We'll do their credit check. We'll do their reference checks. So we put them through quite an extensive process. And then by the time they've passed all that, then we know they're good tenants. So we do our homework. We would rather, be very thorough and be slow at, picking a tenant than having problems in the future.
Yeah, it makes sense for sure. Now, in terms of tenants, too, one of the things I read recently is the average household income is about $44,000 a year. So going into the North End and buying something at $400,000 or $500,000 and trying to rent that at $2,500 or whatever you might need may not make as much sense for a buy and hold investor.
Definitely. I think that the Brantford, like a lot of people have a hard time getting their head around that because they're used to, Toronto, Oakville, Mississauga rental prices. But yeah, no, it's tough to get those kind of rents here in Brantford. A lot of times they can't afford to pay, $2,500 for a house because it's just, they're so limited, right? So, but like, $1,200, $1,300, $1,500, $1,600, like that's usually not a problem for them.
Yeah, that's what I find too. There's a lot of, if you go on Kijiji, there's a lot of the investors that are posting their properties. The ones that are $1,400 to $1,600 or even a little bit less tend to go right away. But there are some that I keep seeing and they're, $2,200, $2,400, and they just keep coming up.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely. If I could just add a little note to that, like the properties that we would be telling investors to buy, their rents are going to fall into that $1,500, $1,600, $1,400 range. So, and those ones usually there's never any problems.
Now, do you think there is, let's just say, a need for any furnished short-term rentals or anything like that?
There is a little. I mean, there's a lot of big players that are doing that already, so it's hard to compete against them. I know there's a Bodega in the downtown area. There's another big building right around the corner, and they're doing it just between them. That's 100 apartments right there that are fully furnished and ready to go. So I would be a little bit nervous about that just because of the competition.
Okay. So let's just say you don't want to do buy and hold. You don't want to do student rentals. You maybe want to do a flip or basement conversion. What's the market for that?
In a market that we're in now, I mean, it's tough to find a good flip. But I mean, they are out there. It's hard to find a good deal on a flip, especially in a market like this. They're a little bit more rare in a market like this.
Okay. Do you find that there's many options for basement conversions?
Basement conversions in Brantford is not very common. Okay. I know Mississauga, like down that in Brampton area, that's very common. But in Brantford, it's not very common.
Okay, that's good. Are there any other types of investing that could work well, or do you think mostly buy and hold would be the best bet?
If I had one suggestion for investors that are looking to invest in Brantford, I would say buy and hold, because we're at a good point where it's good to invest here, but in the future I see a lot of growth, and I'm doing the same thing. I'm just holding. I'm waiting for the growth to even get even higher, and then look for other options. But I would definitely say buy and hold.
Especially if the cash flow is there, it's easy to do.
Yeah, and then Brantford is not a market like Toronto area where, you buy something next month, it's gone up 20%. Brantford is not like that. Brantford is, nice, healthy growth. Last 15, 20 years, we go up about 5% each year. But last year to this year, we went up 28. So in Brantford is like nice, healthy, slow growth.
That's great. Now, in terms of schools, and if as a buy and hold investor that wants to focus on single family properties, are there any school zones or areas to avoid if we want to cater to the family market?
I would say there's probably one or two schools that have a bad reputation, and other than that, I think most of the areas are pretty good.
Okay. So like Eagle Place, the ones that you mentioned, people like those schools, Homedale.
Yeah, none of those schools I would have concern with, but in different areas, a little bit of an older area, which is old part of East Ward. There's a couple of schools that I would probably suggest not to buy around. Other than that, that's it.
Okay, all right, that's great. And then in terms of rent to own, I know there's probably a few people that are listening that are interested in rent to own. Is that an option for Brantford?
To be honest with you, I've never dealt with it too much. I do see a few people do it here. I don't know how well it does, but I don't have too much experience on that, so I wouldn't know how they work out.
All right, sounds good. In terms of competition, how much competition is there out there?
Yeah, unfortunately, just the way the market is, there is usually multiple offers because, Brantford's been put on the map. We were put number fourth city to invest in Canada. So a lot of information is out there about Brantford, so a lot of people want to invest here, so there is quite a bit of competition. But having said that, we can always find deals. A lot of the deals that we deal with don't even come from the MLS.
Right, and I think that's a great point too, is because you're local in Brantford, it's very easily a possibility that you're going to have something that before it hits MLS, you called me actually today for one and said, hey, I'm putting this house on the market in 2 weeks. You want to take a look at it before? So a lot of that stuff happens prior. And I think that's why it's important to use a realtor that is actually local, right? I mean, you wouldn't go to Thunder Bay or to Toronto and, try to compete there. But I think being in Brantford, you've got the upper hand.
Yeah, definitely, and I totally agree with that. And like you said, even to Toronto, I don't understand the Toronto market. I wouldn't be, able to do any justice there. I can refer people down there, but Brantford, I know, everything about Brantford, about the real estate market, so I can definitely be a good asset.
Awesome. And just one last question with the tenants. So, a lot of the people have asked me, tenants, how are they like in Brantford, right? And sometimes they might hear horror stories, and I tell them that they're actually pretty good and you have to screen them properly. But with your properties, have you had any issues, or is it pretty much the standard stuff?
Knock on wood, so far it's always been the standard stuff. I've got properties where I haven't seen the inside for over 10 years. They pay their rent, same tenants. So I've been really lucky that way. There's a couple of properties where, you're always going to have issues here and there, but nothing major. And if someone was to ask me, hey, would you ever invest in real estate? If you know what you know now, I would say, of course. It's definitely a good way to go. And it doesn't matter, whether you've got investment properties or you're just getting into it. We can walk anyone through it because of our experience. So.
And you're also, I think, proactive in, doing more learning and knowledge. How do you find your information and stay up to date?
We have, I've got a database of, anyone that we've worked with as investors. So there's a lot of data that we have that most agents don't have. We have someone in our office that strictly looks at the numbers. So we know what the duplexes are selling for, what the triplexes are selling for, how many days they stay on the market. So we have all that data. We're only a day or two behind of the current data. So by the time the MLS sends out all those numbers, we already have those weeks before.
That's awesome. Now, you mentioned duplexes and triplexes. Are those something common? I haven't seen any good ones yet.
Yeah, no, they do come by, but a lot of them are, in rough areas or in rough shape, which would attract rough tenants. But the good ones do come up. They're usually, a good duplex will probably be closer to 300 range. So, they are out there, but, they're a little bit more pricey.
And then you wonder if it makes sense with sometimes utilities are not separated,
sure,
and the amount that you can charge sometimes is not worth it for that.
Yeah, definitely.
Bucks, right?
Yeah, and I have the same thinking as I would rather just buy a single family home. Yeah, take a little bit less, but you know what? I'm going to have less headaches. So it's more appealing to me, the bottom line.
Absolutely. And just because it takes me, in terms of my single family properties, maybe 2 hours a month to manage them. You have 22. What kind of time are you putting in? How you're managing that?
My multifamilies, I have a property manager for, and then most of my single families, I just do it myself. I really not spending too much time on them. So just like yourself, I would be lucky if I spend maybe a couple hours on the whole thing.
Wow.
So
that's even better.
Yeah, I've got it down pat. And the multifamilies, I just don't want to deal with those tenants. So I give that to a property manager.
That's great. So how many are you self-managing on your own?
If I was to get, I would probably say about 8 or 9. I'll check up on them maybe every 3-4 months. I've got a knock on wood again. I've got a pretty good relationship with most of them, where I don't even really have to check up on them, but I still like to. If there's any issues or anything like that, address them before they become really big issues.
So do you have any long-term tenants that have been there for many years?
Yeah, I've got 2 tenants that have been there for, one's been for 13 years and one has been there for 12 years.
That's amazing.
And then I've got a bunch of them for like 7-8 years as well.
That's good, and it's also bad. So I guess my next question to that is obviously the rent market has exploded, just like the prices in the past couple years. And, you're probably left behind because you can't raise it as quickly.
Correct.
So
yeah, for sure.
How do you handle that?
I'm okay with that because my whole thinking is that I'm okay with having a little bit of less rent than, I would rather have a good tenant.
Right.
Because, a tenant can cause you problems and there goes your increase in rent down the drain. So I would rather, keep the tenant, keep them happy. Yeah, I could increase the rent a little bit, but I would rather have them stay.
Yeah, no, makes sense for sure. And I'm sure that's not every single one of your properties, but if it's an odd few, then I'm sure it doesn't matter as much.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, cool. So the next part of our podcast is the lightning round. So I'm going to ask you a series of questions, and you can expand a little bit on each answer. It'll just allow people to get to know more about you. Is that okay?
Okay, sure.
So first question is, what is your favorite real estate investing book?
I would say Rich Dad and Poor Dad, famous book.
Great. That's a very popular one. Actually, the last guest I had on here, Charles, said the same thing. So
did he?
It's a really great book. Well, it changes people's mindset. You read it and you understand something completely different than you've been told.
For sure, definitely.
What about your favorite podcast? Do you listen to podcasts?
To be honest with you, no, I don't. I watch a lot of YouTube videos, but...
Okay, so what about YouTube videos?
I watch a lot of stuff from the States in investing, and I watch a lot of stuff that have to do with real estate as well, just as the business is real estate. I watch a lot of Tom Ferry stuff. He's a real estate coach. So I'm interested in that kind of stuff.
That's great. Your favorite pastime. So what do you do when you're not doing anything related to real estate? For fun. For fun. I'm a big foodie, so I enjoy my food. I enjoy a good meal. I do play a lot of squash. I do work out, so I try to keep healthy that way. And just, hanging out with friends and family. Good. You just went on vacation recently, too.
Yeah, I'm trying to go on a little bit more vacations, at least once a year. But yes, I went to Puerto Rico.
Nice. It's on my bucket list.
Yeah,
so,
great place to go.
Did you go with some friends?
Yeah, I went. There was 3 of us that went.
Nice. So let's just say you lost all your money in your assets. I'm sure it won't happen for real, but let's just say you do. How would you start again?
You know what? My goal eventually would be, if I lost everything, my goal would to get back into real estate. So I would do whatever I needed to do to go buy my first property because I know what it's done for me. I would start that all over again.
How did you get your first property? Like, did you save? Did you?
No, it's actually a funny story. My parents weren't too happy about this, but I took a OSAP to pay for my university because I went to McMaster.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of spending it on my tuition, I went and bought a property.
Wow. That's very brave, but it worked out excellently, so that's great. Where can listeners find you if they wanted to reach out for you for more information?
They can visit our website. It's munirgroup.ca. That's Munir, M-U-N-I-R, group.ca. Or they can call my office, 519-304-5323. Or they can email me. It's Manny, M-A-N-N-Y, .munir, M-U-N-I-R, at century, and then 21.ca. Or you can call me direct on my cell, 519-865-7395. Excellent.
Any last tips or words of advice for our listeners?
I would just say, if you're a new investor and you've been thinking about investing, I would say Brantford is probably a great place to start. Prices are very reasonable, and we're going through a healthy growth. If you're a savvy investor, I would still say invest in Brantford. There's good properties that can be found here.
I will second that because I've got a few myself there, and they've done really, really well thanks to you because you found 3 of them. So thanks very much, Manny, for being on the show, and I'm looking forward to buying more houses in Brantford with you.
All right, perfect. Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thanks very much.
Thanks so much for listening to Where Should I Invest with your host, Sarah Larbi. Make sure to listen in next time. We'll catch you on the next episode of Where Should I Invest?